I welcome you, dear friends, to yet another session of Through the Bible. It is indeed God's grace and an opportune time that we can continue to study the Bible together. In our last study, we were discussing about Jacob's descendants having lived for 3.5 centuries in Egypt. They had increased and multiplied and become a great nation in this foreign land. Then we saw two plans that were devised by Pharaoh to contain the Israelites because he saw the real possibility of the Israelites joining forces against the Egyptians. The first plan was to enslave them. The new Pharaoh never knew Joseph and therefore felt no indebtedness toward him, nor was he kindly disposed towards the Israelites as had been his predecessors. Therefore, instead of exercising the possibility of asking them to go away, he schemed wickedly to enslave them, to build treasure houses of Pithom and Ramesses. With each passing day, the Egyptians made their life harder and harder. Despite of the affliction, God was with them and their numbers continued to grow. It was then that a new plot arose when the Hebrew midwives were ordered to kill every male child born to a Hebrew. The Israelites continued to grow in number because God intervened again by making the Israelite women bear babies with ease, and the midwives too disobeyed the order because they feared God. We then drew a lesson that Satan was attempting to destroy the line leading to the Lord Jesus Christ, right from the start until today through centuries of anti-Semitism campaigns, but God was continually faithful to the Israelites. Today, aren't you curious to know if Pharaoh has eviler plans in store to destroy the Israelites? On the other hand, is God willing to wait for more affliction to come to the Israelites, or does he have a rescue plan? Well, friends, as more interesting truths await us today, let me usher you right away into today's study of Exodus.
Welcome, dear friends, to Through the Bible. Welcome once again to the study of the Word of God. We are going to witness the heroism of two amazing women and the birth and life of one of God's servants, Moses. Please do make an effort to put aside any distraction and listen to the Lord as you hear His Word. As Satan attempted to get rid of the children of Israel, God intervened. Exodus 1:17-20. But the midwives feared God and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, Why have ye done this thing, and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, Because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively, and are delivered ye the midwives come in unto them. Therefore God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. This attempt to destroy all the male Hebrew children was a political maneuver that did not work out. Exodus 1:21. And it came to pass, because the midwives feared God, that he made them houses. These women had to choose whether to obey Pharaoh or God. They had learned to fear God, and their obedience was seen and rewarded by God. He gave Shiphrah and Puah both a name and a place in Israel, and they were greatly respected in the land. Exodus 1:22. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, Every son that is born he shall cast into the river, and every daughter he shall save alive. If this order had been carried out, Israel would soon have been exterminated. Pharaoh's orders were not obeyed, and the succeeding chapters in Exodus clearly show it. God raises up Moses to deliver the children of Israel out of Egyptian bondage. Exodus is the great book on redemption. It reveals in picture form how God delivers us today from sin, the world, the flesh, and the devil, and saves us for heaven. Moving on to chapter 2. In this chapter, we have before us Moses the deliverer. He is prominent as the deliverer of Israel in the first 11 chapters of Exodus. Exodus is the great book of redemption. Nothing is begun or ended in this book. It is simply a continuation of a story that started in Genesis and continues on into the books of Leviticus and Numbers. Exodus 2, 1-2. And there went a man of the house of Levi, and took to wife a daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived, and bare a son. And when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. This is the age-old story of the man who sees a woman, falls in love with her, and marries her. She loves him in return, and they have a child. This is what human life is all about, and that is the story we have here. Moses is writing this account of his parents and of his own birth, and it is a modest record. This is why we must turn to other portions of the Bible to give us more information about the events in Exodus. If given the opportunity, most of us would want to tell about our parents in detail, but Moses did not even mention his parents by name. They were ordinary people. They were in slavery. They were members of the tribe of Levi. That is all Moses says at this point. Later on, we are given their names as Amram and Jochebed. Verse 2 tells us only that Moses was a good, healthy child. Moses also seems quite reticent about giving his own record in any detail. Exodus 2:3. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. Moses was not only a healthy child, but he also had a good set of lungs. His parents could hide him at first, but the day came when Moses could really scream at the top of his voice. What a contrast this is to several years later when the Lord asks him to be his spokesman to Pharaoh, and Moses says that he cannot speak. Many of us are good at crying like babies, but as adults we do not do so well for the Lord. Jochebed had a serious problem. She could no longer hide her child. A lot of pious people would have acted differently from this mother by saying, "Well, we're just going to trust the Lord." That is a wonderful statement to make. But do you really trust the Lord when you are playing the fool? Jochebed would have been foolish to keep her child in the house when a guard passing by might have heard his cry. It would have meant instant death for Moses. I can hear someone saying, the child would not cry when the guard passed by. How do you know? Faith is not a leap in the dark, as I had heard a liberal say some years ago. God asks us to believe that which is good and solid. God never asks us to be foolish. Jochebed did a sensible thing. She made a little ark and put Moses in it. Exodus 2:4. And his sister stood afar off, to wit what would be done to him. In addition to fashioning the ark, Jochebed also sent Moses' sister to watch it and find out what would happen to her brother. Her sensible actions indicate that she was trusting God. Exodus 2:5. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. Now the hand of the Lord is revealed. The Lord is going to intervene in this situation. This is what the Lord does when you use common sense. And Jochebed had demonstrated sensibleness. Pharaoh's daughter came to the Nile River to wash. It was undoubtedly a secluded spot, and there was an ark. She had one of her attendants bring the ark to her. Exodus 2:6. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept, and she had compassion on him, and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." At that very moment was the right time for the child to cry. In fact, the Lord pinched little Moses, and he let out a yelp, and God brought together two things that he had made: a baby's cry and a woman's heart. Pharaoh's daughter just could not pass this little baby by. Exodus 2:7. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee?" Miriam, Moses' sister, made a very helpful suggestion to the princess, and later on, she is not going to let her young brother forget it. This is a very human story we are reading, friends. God has something to tell us on every page of his book. Exodus 2:8. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go, and the maid went and called the child's mother. This is a real turn of events, and it shows how God really moves when we act sensibly and move by faith sensibly. The very mother of the child was called to nurse him and be paid for it. You cannot beat that, friends. You cannot beat God when He is moving in our hearts and lives. Exodus 2:9-10. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, Take this child away, and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses, and she said, Because I drew him out of the water. The name Moses means drawer out, and Pharaoh's daughter named him this because she had drawn him out of the water. Although the identification of the Pharaoh of the oppression is a controversial subject and a matter of speculation, Pharaoh's daughter may have been the oldest daughter of Ramesses II, or she may have been his sister. According to the Egyptian customs of the day, her firstborn son had the right to the throne. Moses would have been the next Pharaoh had Ramesses II and his queen remained childless. The first 40 years of Moses' life were spent in the courts of Pharaoh. He was raised and trained like an Egyptian. He looked like an Egyptian, talked like an Egyptian, and acted like an Egyptian. He was recognized as an Egyptian when he went to Midian. As we shall see later in the book of Exodus, Moses was educated in the great temple of the sun, which was the outstanding university of the day. We underrate what the Egyptians knew and accomplished. Their knowledge of astronomy was phenomenal. They knew the exact distance of the sun. They worked on the theory that the earth was round and not flat. They knew a great deal about chemistry, which is evidenced by the way they were able to embalm the dead. We have no process to equal it today. Their workmanship and ability with colors were fantastic. Their colors are brighter than any we have today. I am confident that our paint companies would give anything if they knew the formulas used for color by the Egyptians. They are bright, beautiful, and startling after 4,000 years. In addition to all of their accomplishments, the Egyptians also had a tremendous library. And Moses, we are told, was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. The one great lack in Moses' education was that he was not taught how to serve God. But do not underestimate Moses. He was an outstanding man. Stephen in the book of Acts gives us some insight into this period of Moses' life, in which time Moses was born and was exceeding fair and nourished up in his father's house 3 months. And when he was cast out, Pharaoh's daughter took him up and nourished him for their own son. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and in deeds. And when he was full 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. And seeing one of them suffer wrong, he defended him, and avenged him that was oppressed, and smote the Egyptian. For he supposed his brethren would have understood how that God by his hand would deliver them. But they understood not. And the next day he shewed himself unto them as they strove, and would have set them once again, saying, Sirs, ye are brethren, why do ye wrong one to another? But he that did his neighbor wrong thrust him away, saying, Who made thee a ruler and a judge over us? Wilt thou kill me, as thou didst the Egyptian yesterday? Then fled Moses at this saying. In other words, all of his training in Egypt did not prepare Moses to deliver the children of Israel. One day when he was out, he saw one of his brethren being persecuted and beaten by one of the slave drivers. And Moses killed the guard. Moses looked around to see if his deed had been seen, but he did not look up. He should have looked up to God, who would have forbidden him to do a thing like this. Because Moses is 40 years ahead of God in delivering the children of Israel. Therefore God is going to put him on the backside of the desert. Exodus 2:15. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well. Moses had spent 40 years in Egypt, but it is not to prepare him for what was to come. Exodus 2:16-21. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away. But Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to Reuel their father, he said, How is it that ye are come so soon today? And they said, An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us, and watered the flock. And he said unto his daughters, And where is he? Why is it that ye have left that man? Call him, that he may eat bread. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah his daughter. Zipporah is given to Moses, and he takes a bride. It is interesting that many of the men in the Old Testament are figures of Christ. Although not all details of their lives typify Christ, they couldn't. They certainly picture Christ in some way. Moses was a murderer, in sharp contrast to Christ our Savior. However, Moses was a type of Christ in that he was God's chosen deliverer. He was rejected by Israel and turned to the Gentiles, taking a Gentile bride. Afterward, he again appears as Israel's deliverer and is accepted. And so we find Moses in the land of Midian. For the next 40 years, it will be his home. 2 sons are born to him. In the desert, he will begin his preparation to be the deliverer of Israel from their Egyptian bondage. There has always been a question relative to Moses' marital state. I am sure he must have loved his wife. But the record we have does not reveal a wonderful relationship. This part of his life is one of the things that Moses more or less passes over. The name Zipporah means sparrow, which may indicate a small, nervous person. Let's stop here, dear friends, and take some time to reflect on how God raised Moses to serve him. God was not dependent on Moses' strategies to save his people. We see how God leads and assists Moses on the journey as he clarifies his calling through his unique discipling methodology. So God bless you as you reflect upon what you have heard today.
Friends, I hope you are all enriched by today's lessons. I also believe you were thrilled to know that God heard the cries of the Israelites and are ready to intervene. God is faithful, brothers and sisters. He remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We too were a bondage to sin and hopelessness. We have nothing in us that God would have interest in, not a merit that he should even look back twice, except for the sake of his loving kindness. Today, as you ponder on God's attitude towards Israel, remember his love for you in the cross of Calvary. He is our true shepherd, and the only true shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. And he makes provision for Israel in the form of Moses. So was Jesus a provision for us. Are you stuck in anything that you are unable to come out of? Is anger, jealousy, death, lust, drugs, anything keeping you in bondage? He is willing to help you if you cry out today. I hope to see you again in the next episode of Through the Bible. God bless you.